What's going on, guys, and welcome back to yet another week of the Snapchat. We're like 80 plus weeks in a row, haven't missed one yet, and today we're going to be talking about Phastos, who's got a really cool ability, but if he's not played in time, it may fall flat. Alex and I have different opinions on today's card. I'm going to break down the synergies and everything you need to know about Phastos. In addition to that, we're also going to be talking about what I think he is, a cube thief. Oftentimes, people don't talk enough about the cards that are great at stealing cubes because, A, people don't expect them. When do you play them? What do you play them? And what to plug into your favorite decks? We got a nice list for you today. And then lastly, guys, decks you should be playing. They may not be the top of the meta, but very respectable stats. And most importantly, ones that people are playing. Why have we forgotten about some of these meta classics in the past? We're going to talk about that all today and more on this episode of the Snapchat. And as always, I am joined by the one and only Mr. Alex Coccia. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of the Snapchat. And I just got done going into the pool today, my man. We're teaching my son to, go in the pool for the summer and enjoy it. And I thought this would be a great opener as we go into this fun week. Are you a pool guy? Does that make sense? Are you a man who enjoys pools?
I like water. I drink lots of water. I tend to enjoy access to water. Yeah, pool water, you know what? Not all the time. It kind of has this spiciness to it. I'm not sure what it is. You drink too much, it kind of gets your lungs burning a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know what it is.
Do you enjoy? For me, I feel like I'm in human soup. So I don't enjoy. I'm not a pool guy. I love the beach. But the pool, I look around and I know there's gallons of piss. There's gallons of. It's a pass.
So you're one of those people that looks at the pool and you're like, oh, that looks like fun, but also everyone's dipping their cocoa schnutz in it, and that kind of just keeps you off it.
It's all of it, man. Yeah, all of it. It is just human soup. That's the best. That's the best. And I know that my days are numbered because when my son is of the age where he's swimming by, I'm going in the pool. I have to go in the pool. So I'm trying to enjoy my last moments here, and I almost want to ask just the viewers too. Are you guys soup people? You should be soup people. Pool people. Yeah. So you're just going all in. You're having the time of your life in the pool.
You know what? Okay, here's the thing. I don't mind a pool. We actually have a pool, but it's one of those ones. My wife and I wanted to get a proper in-ground pool, concrete around it, the whole thing. In Canada, it's kind of hard because it's only good for a couple months a year.
Yeah.
So and my wife's like, you know what? No, I want a pool with this high back. So. Okay, I can't believe it's coming up again, but I happened to be at Costco. And they had
oh my God.
This pool. They had a pool in a box kit. I'm not making this up, dude. And I was like, hey, you know what? That's pretty cheap, all things considered. So I bought it and we set it up. We did some gravel around it and some stonework.
That's
put
not
some
bad
plants
at the
around it, make it look
house.
nice,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it has this high back, and my wife likes that because we can literally just take the ladder out of the pool so the kids can't access it. So it just keeps it a little safer. But what I will say is I think we've established that I'm not necessarily I can't sit on a lawn chair in front of a pool and suntan. I'm a shoes on the beach kind of guy. You know what I mean? That's well established. So
but community pools. I don't mind a backyard pool. Then it's my soup. I'm good with that, but kind of. But what about a community?
No, I'm not into community pools. Get out of here with that.
Okay, exactly. But here's the deal. I like water parks, man. I'm liking some slides. I could do some of that.
You ever been to a Great Wolf Lodge?
I haven't been to one of those. Dude, that's actually my nightmare. That's the definition of that. The water there has got to be, stuff that we haven't even seen on the periodic table.
Yeah, fun fact, swimming diapers that kids wear, they literally do nothing.
just poo everywhere. Okay, so there's my question of the day. Glad to know you're a pool person, but we've got ourselves a pretty good week. Not really. I'm actually interested to hear what you have to say about this card, because this is definitely one that people are split on. We both know we're just excited for Airship, right? That's it. That's what we're all here for. That's what we're waiting for. But we know what we're talking about over here. What are we talking about on your side of the Snapchat?
Cozy, on my side of the Snapchat, we're going to be discussing Makari and giving her our final verdict in review. We're also going to be talking about the best cards in Marvel Snap that no one is playing right now. We have some absolute bangers that we can't wait to talk about. And then, of course, we're going to close it out with the Snapchat mailbag.
All right, man. Well, let's get right to it. Let's jump on in. Phastos. He's a 3-cost, 3-power card, the new card this week, with the ability of Honor Reveal. Give each card in your deck -1 cost and +2 power. Now, alongside Phastos, we've got 2 different cards, Spider-Ham and Corvus, coming out in the spotlight. Kind of interesting. Give me your initial impressions. What's that star rating at Phastos? I'm gonna know what camp are you on, good or trash?
I'm definitely in the camp that I think Phastos is good. I'm going 4 stars, Cozy.
Oh man, I can't wait. Okay, all right, and listen, I respect it. I am definitely not on that. The more I thought about it, okay, hear me out. I love his ability. Obviously, his ability is awesome. But this might be one of the... I just don't see Phastos being a card you can, A, build around. Okay? Like, making him maybe plug and playable, and that's where I could be wrong. But 2, this may be one of the single worst cards to play late. Like, if you play him on turn 3, Phastos is going to be great. And very, very valuable card. There's a couple decks he might work in. Really only 1, maybe 2 that I see him solidified in. Bro, past turn 3, you can't tell me. It's like one of the worst plays you could have.
I definitely see that. I completely agree. At the same time, I play a lot of Silver Surfer, which I think is going to be a place where Phastos, we're going to have that conversation, I'm sure. And I play lots of Nakia in it. And so I'm very used to having these cards that get slotted in at very specific times. Okoye and Nakia are good examples of cards that need to be played on curve for most their greatest effectiveness. But even playing a Phastos on turn 4, for instance, if that +2 power hits a Brood, or it hits, whatever the heck it's going to hit, that could have a very significant impact. The thing that, for me, that holds it back is the inability to pick whether or not a card gets negative cost or plus power.
Dude, that's the thing. So you have 2 variants at play. Like, Cersei had 1 variance, right? This is... First of all, you have to hope that the stuff in the deck you still want, like the Sarah's in there, and you get the -1 cost. Number 2, you don't even know which one you're going to get, so maybe you're lucky enough to get the Sarah, but she gets +2 power, which is fine. It's not bad. The thing is, if Phastos was a 2, which is essentially a Okoye at this point, I would love him at like a 2-2 or 2-1, and because at that point you got a couple turns you might be able to play him. I just don't like the variance. Because of that, I haven't even given my star rating. Dude, I might be at 2.5 stars. I truly think I'm going probably 2.5. I could be wrong, but I feel kind of right about this one. But let's dive in. We'll talk about the synergy and where we see, where he's going to work all together. But what I will say, I wanted to say this, and we actually have it as our second subject here. I think this guy will be a cube thief. I think the cube equity here is going to be fantastic, Alex, because you've got your opponent, just as much as you are, guessing -1 cost, +2 power. That's obviously going to be nice and surprising. But let's go to synergy, bud. Let's talk about it. What do you got? What's the first one you want to talk about?
Well, I mean, I think we should need to talk about Silver Surfer right off the top. I mean, we'd be remiss not to. Like, Phastos' effect is incredibly powerful. And actually, I had this thought. This was like a shower thought I had. I was like, man, imagine we had original Chavez. Do you know how good this card would be with original Chavez? To give you an idea of how powerful that card design was, it would have pushed Phastos in to give you an additional chance to drop by 5%. It would have guaranteed that Chavez was either 1 cheaper or +2 power. Like, that's why that design space had to change, right? But we don't have that anymore. So let's talk about what it can do with Surfer. I do like the idea of potentially, people talk about getting Sarah out on turn 4, and that's cool and all. But that would mean that you would have to play Phastos on 3, top deck Sarah on 4, and then have Sarah miraculously get hit by the negative. Like, you can't rely on that. You can't rely. So what you said was absolutely true. This is not a build-around card that you can rely on the effect with. It is just a pure value card that you're going to happily accept whatever results you get. And one of the things with Sarah Surfer specifically that I think is really important is the opportunity to potentially play 4 3-drops on turn 6, because if you have 2 cards that have been discounted by 1 additional negative energy, that means you can play even more. Challenge is going to be whether or not you can actually have all those cards in your hand, because Silver Surfer tends to actually dump their hand pretty effectively.
So first of all, I want you to sell me, right? Like, I want to like this card, and yeah, to your point, okay, you've got, not only is he a 3 cost, like it's the easy, he's a 3, but more importantly, his synergy directly with Surfer's kit is awesome, right? So, A, play him after 3, no big deal. You can at least boost him up. But B, to your point, you've got the Sarah and the super negative cost going on. Also, my friends, he can reduce below 1. So he can get cards for free if it hits a 1. It doesn't have any, there's no minimum on his ability read, which is also kind of cool. Don't have a lot of those cards. But dude, Sebastian Shaw, Brood, to what you said earlier, maybe even Hope Summers. Obviously, Hope Summers is in a lot more builds. That is where I see the crazy potential of this guy, because yes, those are cards that Obviously, you want them to get the power buff like Sebastian Shaw, but then the cost minus is also great. So it's like you're getting both, and you're fine with either or. I think this will easily be the strongest. You have Absorbing Man maybe in there as well, and he can feast off the Brood or feast off of just Phastos himself. I think he will not just be a fun niche Surfer card, but truly a force in there.
Yeah, and you know what? I understand the idea of like him sucking, like playing on like 5. No, you wouldn't play him on 5, like on 6, or as a closer, as just being an extra body. I totally get that. It kind of reminds me what it felt like to play Rogue sometimes, where like you have Rogue on turn 6, you're like, well, I guess this is a 3/4, right? Like that's kind of how you played it, or you try to gamba and maybe they might play an Iron Man here, I don't know, but it felt bad, and I think Phastos even feel worse because at least Rogue had some upside there. So I totally agree with that, and I think that's what kind of detracts from its star rating. But I want to throw something else at you here. So, like, we're talking about Silver Surfer, and, like, I think that's going to be a very natural place to include it. But I know you're like, Alex, we need to talk more synergies. We need to reach deeper. Silver Surfer is the low-hanging fruit, right? What about the Mad Titan? I'm just throwing it out there. What about the Mad Titan? You got all those stones. They can go to 0 cost.
And to our point, we just said it can go to 0 cost, like you just said. I do like that, and I don't know about you, man. Yeah, he's not as one-dimensional with like the get Pro X out early, but man, this is a much more fun thing. I'm loving the stones. I'm loving the way it's all about Thanos himself. And Phastos is the perfect card in here because you don't need him. You definitely don't need him in the kit, but if he's in that opening hand, you're like, okay, all right, we've got a little something, or you draw into it a bit more. Yes, dude, what's funny? I went a different direction, but I like the Thanos pick, man. I do. I actually wasn't. I should have. I think we actually brought this up when we talked about him in the early, thoughts on him. But this is a solid. But what else would you have in the deck?
Oh man, I mean, I'm kind of working on that. I think this is gonna be one of the primary places I play. I have like a Silver Surfer deck kind of ready for it, but I don't think that's gonna be too fancy. I don't think I'm gonna reinvent the wheel on Surfer. I'm gonna work with what's like currently working. With Thanos though, I'm still kind of making that list. But here's the thing though, like even something as simple as like what are really good 6 drops that can come out on 5. I think Scar makes that deck, because if you can start sneaking things out early, even Scar can get discounted, right? Suddenly you might have a Scar that costs
Sasquatch, dude. Imagine Sasquatch, because you get the free cards. He has plus power, or Sasquatch is even cheaper than he was to begin with, or Mockingbird. Mockingbird's be like 11. Those have to be in there, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. But the other thing is, I think that like an ongoing Thanos deck would probably be a good idea, because if you're giving +2s to the stones and you're discounting them, you're likely going to have a very large board presence with them. So like the Blue Marvels, maybe even like a Spectrum type top off might be interesting.
Yeah, so 2 things. First, I want to say something quickly about Surfer before we move forward on it. And those are, I think Thanos definitely is going to be a cool deck to make with them. I don't think people experiment enough with Surfer, my own personal opinion. Like, for instance, this is probably not going to work, but like you could go Pixie on 2. You could have Mobius in that deck and Phastos. So now you've got this weird, okay, you Pixie, maybe you put the cost already kind of wonky, and then you can Mobius on 3 if you don't get Phastos, or you double down and you Phastos on 3. There are new builds that you can do with Surfer that people are simply not doing. I mean, I tried out a Storm, Juggernaut, Makari list. We're not seeing much of that. That used to be the meta in Surfer. It's kind of like the same 4 or 5 cards and Absman in there. And I think there are some new Surfer builds that could happen with Phastos. That's kind of the closing note I wanted on here. But you mentioned the ongoing list with Thanos. My thought is, though, no question about it, his next best home, or really probably his best one after maybe Surfer or Thanos, has got to be Gilgamesh, and I want to kind of walk you through what I think would be fun here. So, Gilgamesh obviously loves the +1 power. We talked and identified about this early when we were going through the cards. You get yourself obviously instantly, potentially a lot of easy power without doing anything. So maybe you get super lucky, but also think about this. All right, you play something like a Koye on 2. Okay, so you boost everything up there. Maybe you play Phastos as well. You don't have to do all these gimmicks, but you can. First of all, Blue Marvel getting cost down would be awesome, because you could get him out that 1 turn early, and then you can do the thing. But man, what I was thinking about is, what about this Phastos, Gilgamesh, wait for it. This is where I'm going to lose him. Arnim Zola kind of deck. Hear me out.
Okay, I'm listening. This seems like a little bit of copium, but
it's definitely copium. It's definitely copium. So at a base level, I think Gilgamesh is going to work great with Phastos. But I've been stewing, bro. I'm like, Arnim Zola and Gilgamesh is such a nasty pair up, and I liked it before the buff, but now You could get first you get a little power on him, or you can get him down to 5. But even more so, man, the fact of getting 2 Gilgameshes activating twice is absurd. I think that's a game winner. Now, you have to be very careful with how you place your cards down, and you're going to have to build the deck in a certain way. But, dude, I think there's some strong potential in the deck. Even something like just having Psylocke in there so you can maybe get the Blue Marvel out on time. Like, there are going to be short and sweet little answers to this. But I liked it a lot, and I felt like this could work with Okoye going into Phastos, going into whatever on the end of the game.
That's actually interesting. You need like a very new design on the Gilgamesh deck. He tends to use like those like Squirrel Girl Zoo style kind of lists, and that wouldn't work with Zola at all. So you'd need to find some other creative ways to get it done.
But you don't need as many cards for the power because you got the double activation. Is kind of my thought. And then hear me out. Where you're like, okay, well that's cool, but what if you don't? What if you don't pull Gilgamesh? Right? That's not gonna work. Well, buddy, how about Phastos with a little Black Panther action? You got the Okoye back in there, and so you've got this either or now. And now Phastos is helping out cards like BP. And obviously, BP's going to love this because he instantly can go up to 12 power and or 24 if you Arnim Zola that. So it's kind of this either or that we used to do with like maybe Mr. Negative, but now you've got Phastos and Gilgamesh and BP.
That's pretty interesting. I like that idea too. I mean, Black Panther we discussed a little while ago when we did the 5-cost tier list. It feels like it's fallen off quite a bit. It just doesn't feel playable. Like the only like you Wong Zola it, that's pretty much your only play, and it seems so like choreographed, right? Like I don't remember losing to Black Panther in the longest time, and so I like that call out. And I have another call out too. Now this again might be huffing a little hopium here, but what about Patriot? Because if you think about it, Patriot decks, they're going to want stuff like, I mean, Iron Man's making Patriot decks. Brood's going to be in there. Mr. Sinister's going to be in there. So with like all these types of cards that have these replicating effects like Sinister and Brood, getting hit with that +2 power could be extremely powerful. Not only that, is you get the, the discount on something like a Patriot Mystique. Allows you to sneak it in some new interesting ways. I think it could be a decent deck.
Dude, I wonder, there's probably no way this happens, but I wonder, since Wasp is already 0, will he just give Wasp +2 power? Or will he try to give negative cost to a 0? Because, like Pixie can do some weird things. Because if that's the case, all of a sudden you have the Wasp that's always going to be a 3 or an 0-3, man. Now we're cooking. I would actually love that idea. Yeah, I thought about Patriot just because the Abs and Brood, right? Like kind of where those go, or Sinister, same deal. And then in that case, you can even, go full crazy, get some Cersei in there, whatever. But yeah, listen, it's not that I don't have ideas how to play him. I just think he's one of those cards where you need to play him on 3, and if you don't, he's going to feel bad. And outside of that, you can't build around him and or the effect because it's so randomized. Love the effect, don't love the card. And then he steps on Okoye's toes if we make him cheaper.
I totally see that, but like I still think there's potential for this card. There's 2 more cards I want to discuss, by the way, before we move on. One of which is just a solo card that I think is not like a build around, but I think it's worth mentioning in this case. And you even alluded to the idea of like there could be new types of Surfer decks that we're not really thinking about. What about Magic? Like Magic's one of those cards that we don't really talk about, but the effect is incredibly powerful. And this is one of those situations where Phastos, if played on 3, it's highly advantageous to have that additional turn because you're drawing another discounted or +2 card where your opponent's not getting that. It's a disproportionate advantage. It's the same reason why you run Magic in something like a Mr. Negative deck. Could Magic be a staple with Phastos?
So less of Magic and more of Tribunal, because Magic's in Tribunal. That's their heaviest deck, right? I'm like, okay, well, Tribunal would love this because you're already trying to get Sarah out there, okay? So then imagine that. You either hit, unless you get unfortunate luck and everything gets +2 power, you still have Iron Man. You still have a couple cards that want that power. All good. But even if you hit Iron Man, if you hit Onslaught, if you hit Tribunal, or even Sarah with the negative cost, you're cooking. And then you have Magic in there to do exactly what she loves to do in the deck, and she keeps the game extended. That's the first deck that came to mind for me with Magic, but I like it. It's a safety gate, if you will. But then you have 2 3s out there, so yeah, could you work that into Surfer maybe? I like it. I like what you're thinking.
I think the only problem with Magic is if you're running Magic and Surfer, it's probably going to be a list that runs like chunkier cards like Spider-Man, Polaris, Gladiator. You're going to run out of board space so fast with classic Absman, Brood type plays. You just can't rely on that at all. That can't be part of the strategy going into 7 turns. But I do think that like it's just worth thinking about specifically with Phastos. And the other card we have to talk about, which I was like kind of waiting for you to bring it up because I know like you're super high on the card. You already talked about Airship, Cozy. Is this not an auto include in Airship decks?
Yo, the biggest recommend recommendation I have to not get Phastos is like, if you can't get Airshim next week, don't get Phastos. Like, you got, yes. By the way, this is such a great Airshim card, man. Because A, you can play them on 2, right? So there you go. That's all you need. And B, it's gonna literally boost up a bajillion cards in the deck. No question, bro. I have not been more excited for a card than Airshim in a very long time. Like, that is like on a content perspective, on an enjoyment perspective. I think even on a competitive perspective, I'm ready for him.
Yeah, I'm ready for him too. And I think the community is as well. I don't remember the last time there was so much excitement about a card. Like, this is one of those cards that people just can't wait to play. And it goes beyond being competitive. I don't think people are expecting it to be like a tier 1, I'm ranking up, I'm taking to a tournament style deck. And if it does that, then cool. I think people just really want to play this card. I think it's actually kind of generating some excitement in Snap, which is a nice change of pace.
Well, what Airshim is going to do is be probably one of the better cube thieves, because you're not going to know what he has. And with that, let's talk about him, right? That's where I think Phastos is going to be. To some extent, we've got ourselves the best cube thieves. Now, we don't talk about these enough, in my opinion. We kind of have stated that before. These are the cards that single-handedly you could place 1 or 2 of these in a deck that you already love, and you have such a better chance because people aren't expecting it. Listen, everybody knows the Red Hulk's coming, quite literally, but even, to other extents, there aren't as popular of cards, and we're going to talk about that on your side, the best cards that nobody's playing, but these are specifically cards with this very high cube equity because of the nature that they're played in. And so I didn't put them in an exact order, but I've got the ones that I prefer the most, that I just don't, I think have a huge shock value, right? So Shang-Chi, not a big shock value. I get it, he can steal cubes, but people almost know they're playing a card that can die. I don't know about you. I see him, I guess, some games, but I'm telling you, man, I still think the disrespect on the King, and by the King, I mean the Shadow King, he's still by far one of the best at his job of being a cube thief, man. A fantastic card for just dirt cheap.
No, we're going to start here. If you didn't bring up Shadow King, I was going to. Like, this is literally the example, the picture-perfect example of a cube thief. And Shadow King's starting to make some lists. It's kind of making its way into the Gilgamesh Zoo a little bit. But other than that, it's remarkably seeing little play, despite the fact that it really destroys Destroy, ironically. It's amazing. It's a fantastic card. It's only actually weak to the Zoo Blarvel decks that it's in itself.
Cool Phastos card, too, because he goes down to 1 or goes up to a 2/4. I'm good with either of those, right? Like, one of those, like, either or, I'm good with it. And maybe that's what ends up being the deck. This guy looks like he stole, too, by the way. Speak about cube thing. You know this guy. Was in his teenage years was stealing from the mall. No question.
You know what this reminds me of? This might be completely wrong. This reminds me of like some sort of like Wish.com version of Aladdin. You know Jafar, when like they're trying to get into the like the
No.
The
if it's
thing?
Aladdin was Jafar. Like if Aladdin had like he decided like Jasmine left him, he's in shambles, his monkey died. Abu, and he's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna get the genie, and we're gonna just wreck shop, and I'm gonna gain like 400 pounds. I see it. I do.
You do? Okay, so I'm not completely off base.
No, not at all. I thought you were gonna go. I get a little Yu-Gi-Oh vibe too from it, like a little like he's sitting there and he's like, I summon whatever the shadow over there. Yeah, he's kind of got the Yu-Gi-Oh dual face.
Doesn't the shadow look like the genie though, like an evil version of the genie?
Yeah, of course, man. Wait, yeah. Would you? I want you to have that hat. I'm telling you. I'm not a master of fashion, but I think you could pull it off.
Yeah, I think I won't be able to find that in Canada.
No, they have plenty of hat shops.
We have like beaver hats. Well, I don't even know what he's wearing. Is that just like a
You don't know what that's
circle?
called?
Is that a cup?
You don't know what that's called?
No idea.
That's great. I don't either. All right, let's go to the next cube thief. And Shadow King, great one at that. Okay. Number 2, man. And these fluctuate. You can go up and down. I just brought about Shang-Chi. I know we're just talking about tech cards to open up. But it can't be said enough. Truly, both Rogue and Enchantress right now, it's a crime, Alex, how little these cards are being played. And I don't understand why people aren't playing these cards when you have Zoo out there and you've got so many different cards and decks that rely on ongoing synergy. I have lost personally some close matches that I just was not expecting this Enchantress to come out. 4/5, I get it. It's not premium stats, but it's also not completely terrible. And then Rogue is Rogue. Dude, these have got to be near the top.
I absolutely agree. I've lost games to these cards coming out as surprises. But there are reasons why these cards aren't being played. It's Rogue, I think, is being supplanted by the Red Guardian, and Enchantress is a victim of Zabu, right? And it's a shame because remember when Enchantress was a 4/6, it got buffed and it was absolutely crushing.
I think she could go back to 4/6 probably. Now that
Yeah,
Zabu's done, like why not? Yeah, why not? She clearly has not played enough. That's why she's mentioned as a cube thief. And I still prefer Rogue nowadays just because it's like taking half these effects from your opponent and just cripples them to such a core. But yeah, man. I mean, let's see it actually. Let's see if 4/6 come back. Hopefully we get this on the on an upcoming OTA. I've got another got a good list here. Do you got any you want to bring up, Cube Thief?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There is one in the 2 cost, which I cannot stop playing. And I've brought it up on the Snapchat before. I challenge everybody in any deck you're building to start with Quake. Dude, Quake is so good, dude. Yes. It's so good. And it's honestly, we're kind of getting into mine because it was one of the best cards that no one's playing.
Dude, I have that as my number one. I have my number one card that nobody's playing is Quake. Number one.
I know, buddy. We're kind of throwing a fishing hook to my version. We're bringing it over here for a sec.
Let's talk Quake.
Quake's insane, dude, and I love it. I absolutely love this card so much, and no one respects it at all. It blows my mind.
Dude, I just spent the entire time with Makari playing Quake, and I was really just playing a control style deck. I had the time of my life. Like, you could play her late, you could play her early. Great example, Superflow was the first location, right? So they played in the middle location, and turn 2, I'm like, cool. And I just switched locations where I got Superflow the rest of the game. They did not. That's a small example of just giving you an advantage. But dude, then she can just win you games too. You can change Crown City, and they were depending on that power. Bro, Quake, man, I've started putting it in a lot more decks, put it that way.
It's funny because we talked about Shadow King first, and the Gilgamesh Zoo deck, where Shadow King's currently being played in a lot, I actually substituted Shadow King for Quake, which sounds crazy, but because you're playing like Gilgamesh on turn 6, or potentially even on turn 5, depending on how the game's going, you often have this turn 6 where like, I actually have a couple extra cards I can play. And these Zoo decks can often squeak out these cards. Yeah. So I was playing Quake as a surprise factor. And it was so good, man. It was so good. And if you sneak her into Sarah-based decks, she's a 1 cost that completely flips the board state at 3 power. Crazy. I think it's an underappreciated Sarah card as well.
Yeah, when I was making this list, right, like I got Legion out there because I still think Legion's effect is fantastic. He's definitely a cube winner and cube thief. Like, he's great at that because you get rid of Limbos, but you can also get rid of the Crown City, to my point that I just said. Instead of utilizing it, you get rid of it. Or you're playing a Zoo deck. I was doing it the other day. I put a Jotunheim out there. I knew this guy was going to suffer way more than I was. But Quake is 2. He's 5. And you're trying to mess up locations, and Quake just does that a little bit easier and cheaper. So it's not that I don't like Legion. I have more cards to talk about on your side, so I won't. But Legion's definitely up there as a cube thief. Now, listen, Alex, I know he's popular. This is probably one of the few uber popular cards, and obviously I know you love him. I still think Magneto, though, is just like, no matter how popular the card is, he is the cube thief, man. People just forget. They just forget.
No, they 100% forget. And it blows my mind that people don't respect Magneto as much as he needs to be respected, because this card has so consistently been one of the best cards in Snap. Its effect is remarkably powerful. It affects so many different decks. It completely upends the board state. Your opponent can't, because there's no tell for having a Magneto. There's nothing in a deck that's like, oh, this is a Magneto. It just does not exist. And so it's always a risk that your opponent has to respect. And it's always, to some degree, a surprise card, which is why these cube thieves are as good as they are. They can catch your opponent by surprise. And because of that, I think Magneto is 100% a cube thief.
Hit me with another.
I'm going to have to say, Cozy, if I'm going to dig really deep into the cube theft, Super Scroll. Super Scroll has been making it into so many different games where, like, I'm not playing Super Scroll, I'll be honest with you, but people are stealing my cubes with it, and I'm actually starting to get upset.
Yeah, why Enchantress when you can just straight up, like, dude, this is the ultimate, like, if you get a Super Scroll and you know they're playing, like, an ongoing deck of any kind, or even Zoo, you're just like, cool, snap on it right away. Like, he is, but I just love it because that deck's only game plan half the time, right, is just make their ongoing cards bigger and, like, you know, get an Iron Man down with the Patriot with an Onslaught, and then you Ultron. Well, all of that's a mess because Super Scroll just single-handedly takes it in. We are finding ourselves in a bit of an ongoing meta. I don't want to use the word, but there's more ongoing decks right now. And so, yeah, dude, this is definitely a solid pick. And on that note of ongoing cards, dude, lately, I'm telling you, I've lost to Claw. I've lost to Claw. I don't know why. You know what it is? They'll play Claw, and I'm like, sucker. And then the +8 happens. I'm like, oh, damn, I forgot. This is not the Claw.
Yeah.
Look, there's just been no adjustment on his tech side outside of the ability. This guy, dude, this is still he's one of my faves, dude. He's a 512.
This is one of those cards in Snap where, like, I just have not played that much. Like, I don't have any variants of him. I don't have any splits of him. But he's a card that I feel like I have to come back to and give proper respect of. Because, like, you can't deny the +8 power now. This is a post-buffed Claw. And it's really strong. Think about other cards, how hard you have to work to get to 12 power. Like a Spider-Woman, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, Claw just laughs in her face, basically, right?
Yeah.
The only reason why you'd even consider playing Spider-Woman is some hopium with, like, Abomination or something.
Yeah.
This is easy power. And it's pure power. Into negative zone, into death domain, whatever it happens to be, it gets there.
Yeah, and guys, so the moral of this is some of these cards might be common in some decks, but playing them in decks that people don't expect. And I'll end on that with Iron Man, right? Iron Man's a perfect example of, like, there are some decks that no crap he's in there. But Iron Patriot took off for a long time because it kind of worked with Bast and some of the cards in the deck. And all of a sudden, you have this instant way to double your power and not worry about a Shuri deck or whatever it might be. If they expect the Iron Man, it's one thing. But if they don't, it's a whole nother. One of my favorite cards to play late. And most of these play late. Like, that's the point. I have other ones, but they're kind of in touch with best cards that no one plays. So we'll go ahead and hold on to those and transition to our last segment, buddy. And that is Hidden Gems, decks you should be playing. Now, these don't have to be the most meta decks, Alex. I'm not looking for that, all right? What I'm looking for there are just so many decks to play right now that people aren't doing. They're not playing. They're playing the same old thing. And so me and you, we definitely play our fair share of decks in Marvel Snap, and that'd be fun to talk about a couple, and I'd love to open this up, buddy, okay? So, first of all, we've got to talk about, I know you're not a crazy fan about it, Mr. Negative, buddy. Mr. Negative. Now, this is just one build. There's another one that I could bring up here, but I'm telling you, with the cards that are available right now and things like Sage, right, and having really Ravonna as the leftovers of Zauber, like one of the only cards that can still do the discount thing, this deck is just insane. You have Cersei as well to work with, even though the power kind of has some conflict with Mr. Negative. Dude, it's just a fun deck, but even more so, this build is probably my new favorite, guys. And without doubt, you've got all of these cards that work in the Angela Athena package that you know you're going to win. We just talked about Iron Man doubling up the power. It brings back Mystique, bro. It brings back Mystique, and you've got all the consistent power as well. What do you think about this beauty?
Oh man, that Athena deck with Mr. Negative is actually pretty cool. And you're right, I've not traditionally been the biggest Mr. Negative fan. Maybe it's like the nightmares I'm having, like from like, do you remember when like beta Mr. Negative was like the deck to play, and maybe I'm still kind of suffering from emotional damage there. But this is actually a nice brew, man. I like it a lot. Specifically, I'll tell you, Wolfsbane making this list actually makes me happy.
I knew it would. If you guys want to know, it's Kitty Pryde, Angela Athena, the package, obviously. You have Ravonna, Ironheart, Mystique, Bishop, Wolfsbane, Rogue, and then you've got Mr. Negative Iron Man and Blue Marvel. And the other one had Cersei in it. So you can make it your own, but definitely this is like just a fun list. You should be playing. It's semi-competitive. Semi does okay. Alex, you got one for me?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to give a quick shout out to just traditional Shuri. Like, honestly, it's still good.
Yeah.
She's play rate is not it's honestly not being played that much. Classic Shuri is legit, man. It's legit. It's very hard to put up with the Shuried Red Skull power, Shuried Vision Taskmaster, all those different play lines. It's a deck that like seems like it's kind of a one-trick pony, but when you think about the mobility of Vision, the straight-up power of Red Skull, the backup plan of Typhoid Mary, and how consistent overall something like a Sauron has been, the ability to play something like a Taskmaster and Ebony Maw on turn 6 is wild. It's a wild power spike. It's a very straightforward deck. It's really inexpensive because it runs no Series 5 cards, no Series 4 cards almost, right? It traditionally sometimes ran Nebula, but it is very inexpensive, very high impact, and honestly not seeing much play.
And dude, really, the thing is about that deck and the one I'm about to show is like, yes, they're not going to get you 8 cubers all the time, right? Because they are like, you have this kind of checkmate on turn 6 most of the time, and your opponent's out of there. But if you're smart when you snap, and then sometimes you get the guys like, he's snapping on me. How dare he snaps in my home, right? And then he snaps, and then you have a 4 doing nothing, which is fantastic. And that's kind of how I feel about Lady Jane Foster. Probably one of the worst cards to get 8 cubes with, right? I mean, again, it's got the one trick thing happening with it. But I love this version of the deck because you got yourself a lot of tech cards in here with Shadow King. You've got, do you see her? Do you see her, Alex? Quake. Quake's in this deck, ready to rock and roll. Killmonger, Mobius, and Red Guardian. And Shang-Chi. So just every tech card you can imagine. And then you have the power. So you're playing defense until you do get that spoon to get the roll. And man, this is definitely a fun build. It doesn't have to be this build, but just the Lady Thor with that package is like Shuri. It's simple but effective.
Yeah, I love the fact that you're bringing this up because Jane Foster recently got buffed, by the way. I don't know if people remember that. But Beta Ray, Jane Foster, and Thor, they've been in this weird middle ground. Like they used to be a very legitimate meta deck, and then they kind of fell off a little bit. I still think that Asgardian package is legit.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see that experimentation. And I love, of course, the addition of Quake in that deck as well. You had Red Guardian in there. You had lots of answers, but also you were asking lots of questions at the same time. Like, can you deal with this Beta Ray? I tend to like Odin in those types of decks. It might be a little greedy, but like I like the Odin in them. But I do like the tech flair you have there because you have lots of answers for lots of problems that are in the meta. Like, should you cut like Shadow King for Odin? Is it worth something like that? Right? It's up to you, I guess.
You got another one for me?
Yeah, for sure. If you're looking for decks that like honestly you can consider playing and like not have to worry too much about like whether it's super expensive or not, I think it's worth mentioning. Now we discussed it with Silver Surfer with Phastos, but Silver Surfer is one of those decks that has so many different variations that you could honestly play so many different versions depending on what you're feeling like. You mentioned it, and I tried it as well. Like a Makari deck with like traditional Storm and Juggernaut, it felt like a completely different game than playing Brood, Absorbing Man, and that general type of combination with Hope Summers and all those things, right? There are so many variations of Silver Surfer, right? I'm even trying some like Jane Foster Silver Surfer. You're playing like super tanky cards. So you're talking about one archetype and like 4 different ways to play it. So if you're a deck builder, a deck brewer, and you want to have a ton of fun and try to find a really unique way to mess up your opponents, right? I think Silver Surfer offers you a lot of tech, B, a lot of power, but most importantly, a lot of variation in the way you can approach the game.
And yeah, to just snowball off what he just said, this has been popular at one point in time, but I gotta say, if you don't know what to play the Toxic Surfer deck. This thing is so much fun, Alex, especially when the meta calls for it. So right now, Zoo's hot, right? Zoo is hot. You got cards everywhere. Bro, there's nothing more satisfying than dropping down the Wong into the Hazmat, into the Odin. I mean, it's just disgusting. Get Mystique in there for the extra greed or Absorbing Man. You got the magic for the extended turns. I mean, dude, look at this. You got 500 games at a 61.9% win rate. I mean, so yes, you can just make your, you could do the traditional stuff, but you could also do the creative stuff. And really, I'll wrap it up with one more deck that I've got. And yes, listen, this had some shells before, and we're not talking about all the Lokis. You guys know about that deck. Those decks, they've been around. This, however, has gone through a bunch of different mutations, right? I love this thing, right? This is the mid-value deck, if you will. It's the Black Bolt Stature, but you've got Dark-Hawk. You've got the Korg and the Rockside package with the Black Widow. But then you also have got some ways to play a bit of defense, maybe with Silver Surfer. This is just such a solid mid-range value deck that's been around for a long time, Alex, and it's continuing to get better as it evolves.
And Stature was brought back in power, right? It was a 5/7, and then it got nerfed to a 5/6, got brought back to a 5/7. So, like, it's kind of back. I don't think people are playing much Black Bolt. This deck still suffers from the idea of, like, you're probably going to discard one of the rocks they drew, right? I kind of really wish Black Bolt hit, like, a random card in their hand or something, but that's probably a little OP. But you can't argue with the stats. And the thing about it as well is no one's going to expect Legion, right? No one's going to expect Silver Samurai. Silver Samurai is going to dump something from their hand. It has a much better impact than Black Bolt under a lot of circumstances. Nico has incredible versatility. This deck does so many different interesting things. I love it. It's an absolute cook. And I've actually been itching for some Black Bolt Stature, so I'm glad you brought this up.
Dude, throw it in there. I tried for so long to do Cersei Black Bolt Stature, and then I was like, okay, I had to mix it up, and how I did that was throw a Pixie in there, just because it's like, okay, Black Bolt 6, whatever. Stature can discount herself. What I will say, though, man, about the deck that we just brought up specifically is Dawkins caught my eye as a Phastos card at the last second. I was like, wait a second. Kind of cool. 2 Dawkin, no problem. Hey, I'll take a 3/6 Dawkin that doubles in power to a 12. You got a 3/12. Sign me up. To get death down to 3 costs nowadays is so hard. Not, so hard, but it's a tough assignment where it's just, you got to get a couple draws that way. So overall, I thought this would be a fun segment to look at decks that, people just aren't playing as much, Alex. Now, we got a lot to break down on Alex's side. If you guys want to go check out that episode, it'll be down in the description. We're going to be talking about Makari. Is she aged like we thought or not? We're going to be talking about similar but cards that people aren't playing, but they should be playing. And Quake got us all hot and heavy. We got more on that list. I got like 6, man, that I like a lot. And then the Snapchat mailbag. We appreciate you guys as always. Thanks for stopping by. And until the next one, happy snapping.